Hello everyone, James is here. Welcome again to Easy English Talks podcast. If you want to watch this video faster or slower, you can adjust the playback speed. Fluency is a big topic for English learners. And I think it's safe to say that we've all felt that awkward pause, especially when the nerves kick in.
Oh, absolutely. I think everyone, even native speakers, have had that moment where the right word just vanishes from their memory.
It's like your brain hits the pause button and your mouth is left hanging. So today we're diving deep into some proven techniques to help you minimize those pauses and speak English more naturally. We've got a stack of research tips and even some brain training exercises.
We'll also be busting some myths about fluency, like the idea that you need to have a massive vocabulary or perfect grammar to sound natural.
Right, because let's be honest, sometimes just getting your point across is the biggest win. But before we jump into solutions, let's quickly understand why these pauses happen in the first place.
There are actually 4 common culprits. First, confidence, or rather a lack of it. When you're worried about making mistakes, it's natural to hesitate. Then there's the vocabulary hurdle. Not knowing the exact word can definitely throw you off.
And I imagine overthinking plays a huge role, like mentally translating everything before you speak.
Absolutely. If you're constantly translating from your native language to English, it creates a mental traffic jam. Think about it. If you're a Spanish speaker and you see a dog in the park, you might think, El perro está corriendo en el parque, before you even get to the dog is running in the park. That extra step slows you down.
So how do we get off this mental translation merry-go-round?
The key is training your brain to think directly in English. Instead of translating, try to form thoughts and sentences directly in English. For example, you could practice describing your surroundings in English, narrating your actions throughout the day, or even having imaginary conversations in your head.
So it's like giving your brain an English workout, building those neural pathways to make the language more automatic.
Exactly. The more you do it, the less you'll rely on translation, and the more naturally you'll start to think and speak in English.
And here's a myth buster that might surprise you. Filler words, those ums and ahs we often try to avoid, can actually be helpful.
It might seem counterintuitive, but native speakers use filler words all the time to bridge pauses and maintain a smooth flow of conversation.
So are you saying that instead of striving for perfectly silent pauses, we should embrace the and make it work for us?
Precisely. Imagine you're about to say, I went to the store. Instead of an awkward silence while you search for the next word, you could say, well, I actually went to the store this morning. The well and actually act as bridges, giving your brain a moment to catch up.
That's a great point. So it's not about eliminating pauses altogether, but about managing them in a way that sounds natural and gives us time to think.
Exactly. And speaking of sounding natural, there's a powerful technique called shadowing that can really help you become more fluent. Have you ever tried this?
I've heard about it, but I'm not sure I fully understand how it works.
Shadowing involves listening to a native speaker, this could be from a podcast, a video, or even a TV show, and then repeating what they say almost simultaneously, trying to match their speed and intonation as closely as possible.
So if I'm listening to a podcast and the host says, I love traveling because it opens my mind to new experiences, I would immediately repeat that sentence, trying to mimic their pronunciation and the rhythm of their speech.
Exactly. It's like a workout for your tongue and your brain, training you to process and produce English more efficiently.
Now, this next point is crucial. Don't aim for perfection. Aim to communicate.
I can't emphasize this enough. So many learners get stuck trying to construct perfectly grammatical sentences, which can lead to frustration and hinder fluency.
It's like when you're trying to decide between saying, I went or I have gone, and you freeze up because you're afraid of making the wrong choice.
Exactly. Remember, the goal of language is communication. It's better to make a minor grammar mistake and keep the conversation flowing than to say nothing at all.
So if you're unsure about the perfect grammar, just go with what feels natural and keep talking.
Absolutely. Fluency is about expressing your thoughts and ideas clearly and confidently, even if it's not always grammatically perfect.
Now let's move on to some specific ways you can train your brain for fluency. We've got a bunch of practical exercises and techniques that you can start using right away.
One powerful tip is to focus on learning phrases rather than just individual words. For example, memorizing, in my opinion, will be much easier to recall in a conversation than trying to piece together each word separately.
That's a great point. It's like having pre-built blocks of language ready to go. What other brain training techniques can we use?
Active listening is key. Immerse yourself in English as much as possible through podcasts, audiobooks, and even TV shows. This will help you internalize natural rhythms and intonation patterns.
It's like training your ear to recognize the nuances of spoken English. And while we're on the topic of training, how about trying to predict conversations? I've found this to be a fun way to sharpen my listening skills.
That's a great one. When you're listening to someone speak, try to anticipate what they might say next. This can help you become a more active listener and improve your response time.
It's like playing a game with the language.
Hmm.
I do this sometimes when watching movies, trying to guess what the characters will say next.
Exactly. And don't forget the power of imitation. Pay attention to how native speakers speak their tone, their rhythm, their use of pauses. Try to incorporate those elements into your own speech.
So it's not just about what we say, but how we say it. The music of the language matters.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears and talk about some practical exercises. You can try to put all of these techniques into action.
Challenge accepted. I'm ready to put my fluency skills to the test.
One fun challenge is the 1-minute speaking challenge. Choose a topic, anything that interests you, and try to speak about it for a full minute without stopping.
That sounds intense. What if I hit a mental roadblock and can't think of what to say?
That's where those filler words come in handy. Use them to buy yourself some time while you gather your thoughts, or rephrase what you were about to say. The key is to keep the words flowing.
So if I'm describing my favorite hobby and I suddenly blank, I can say something like, well, my favorite hobby is, something creative like painting, because I find it relaxing and inspiring.
Exactly. You're using those fillers strategically to maintain momentum and avoid awkward silences.
I'm liking this strategy already.
Mm.
What other exercises are in your fluency toolkit?
Another effective technique is story retelling. Listen to a short story or a news segment, and then try to retell it in your own words. This helps you practice summarizing information and expressing your thoughts coherently in English.
So if I listen to a story about a new scientific discovery, I could try to summarize it for someone else by saying, so they discovered this amazing new planet that could potentially support life. It's incredible.
Precisely. You're absorbing information, processing it, and then expressing it in a way that makes sense to you and your listener.
It's like taking information in one format and then translating it into your own personal English style.
Exactly. And speaking of translating, let's talk about speed conversations. This exercise is all about thinking and responding quickly, almost like a verbal sprint.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does this speed conversation work?
Set a timer for, say, 30 seconds, and have someone ask you a simple question like, what's your favorite thing about your city? Try to answer as quickly and naturally as possible without overthinking it.
It's like a mental agility course for your English. I can see how that would force you to be more spontaneous and less hesitant.
And finally, don't underestimate the power of technology. Speech-to-text apps can be invaluable for tracking your progress and identifying areas where you might need to focus on pronunciation.
So I can use an app to record myself saying something like, I'm really enjoying this podcast about fluency, and then check if the app transcribes it correctly.
Exactly. It's like having a digital pronunciation coach in your pocket, providing immediate feedback and helping you fine-tune your spoken English.
I'm definitely going to try that. But, as helpful as all these techniques and exercises are, I think confidence plays a huge role in fluency. What are your thoughts on this?
Confidence is absolutely essential. It's the foundation of fluency. When you believe in yourself and your ability to communicate, you're less likely to hesitate or get flustered.
Yeah, it's like that saying, fake it till you make it. Even if you don't feel completely confident, at first, projecting an air of confidence can actually help you feel more at ease and speak more fluently.
That's a great point. It's about embracing those inevitable mistakes and using them as learning opportunities. Remember, even the most fluent speakers make mistakes sometimes.
It's about focusing on connecting with your listener and sharing your message rather than striving for absolute perfection.
Exactly. And remember, fluency is a journey, not a destination. It's an ongoing process of learning, practicing, and refining your skills.
So it's not about reaching some magical endpoint where you suddenly become perfectly fluent. It's about enjoying the process and celebrating those small wins along the way.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest wins is simply realizing how much progress you've already made. Think back to when you first started learning English. You've come a long way.
That's a great reminder. It's so easy to get caught up in what we still need to learn that we forget to acknowledge how far we've already come.
So be kind to yourself, be patient, and most importantly, have fun with the process. Learning a language should be an enjoyable experience.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into fluency, what's one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I would say this fluency is within your reach. It's not about being perfect. It's about being confident, embracing mistakes, and practicing consistently.
And don't be afraid to experiment with the techniques we've discussed today. Find what works best for you and make it a part of your language learning journey.
Exactly. And remember, we're here to support you along the way.
So to our amazing listeners, we challenge you to choose one technique from today's episode and put it into practice this week. Whether it's the 1-minute speaking challenge, shadowing, or simply focusing on thinking in English, take that step and see what happens.
And let us know how it goes in the comments. We love hearing your stories and celebrating your successes.
And don't forget to subscribe and share the video with your friends. Bye, and see you next time. Bye-bye.